Good morning and welcome to a webinar looking at the benefits to companies of employing an apprentice and just how simple it can be. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Antonia Gray, and among other things, I'm the Training and Education Lead at the BMRA. Right, so let's move on. Not beautiful. I can't get it to move on. Oh, here we go. Just quickly about the British Metals Recycling Association. We are the trade association representing the scrap metal sector. We are the voice of the metal recycling industry in the UK. The main industry contact for representing scrap metal merchants through the UK government, DEFRA, Environment Agency, different police services, Home Office. We offer advice on technical, regulatory, legislative, policy, environment issues. We do studies looking at waste classification. We offer members employment and business helpline. Members also benefit from exclusive insurance rates, premiums that are only available to members, and there are a lot of other member benefits, including networking events. So let's go on to the Metal Recycling General Operative. So here we are, we're just going to skip through the agenda of this webinar. So what are the benefits? What is the Metal Recycling General Operative? What are the benefits of taking on an apprenticeship? What are the benefits of doing an apprenticeship? How it's funded and how easy is it to employ an apprentice? So the Metal Recycling General Operative was launched in 2018, and the MRGO itself is overseen by the BMRA's Education and Training Committee, comprising volunteers from the following companies. The Metal Recycling General Operative is the only sector-specific apprenticeship. Apprentices have to be 18, which is right considering the environment that they'll be working in. It takes between 12 and 18 months, and the system of learning is based on 3 elements: knowledge, skills, and behaviours. For our apprenticeship, we chose to do core KSVs and offer 5 options, which reflect the different work that goes on a scrapyard. Our 5 options are weighbridge, end-of-life vehicles, waste electrical and electronic equipment, material classification, material handler, and training delivery. And training delivery has done that, and there's also endpoint assessment. So the MRGO was launched in 2018 and got a lot of praise from the then Chief Executive of the Institute for Apprenticeships, Sir Jerry Berrigan. One of the most popular courses and training modules that the apprentices have gone on is the fire training module, which has proved really useful. So now we come to the benefits of employing apprenticeship. I'm going to pass over to Susie Burridge, the Chief Executive of Recycle Products Limited, and also the BMRA President.
Good morning, everyone. I was very fortunate to be able to employ 2 apprentices on the first scheme. It was a great experience for us all. The whole company benefited from it. And the thing that I took away from it most was how their confidence grew, and they grew as individuals. They came back from their learning with new information, asking a lot more questions. They became a lot more professional. At the end of the course, one finished with a distinction, which I was really proud of, as we are only a SME, and wasn't something I was expecting. So I was very proud. My 2 focused on the material handling. That was the option they chose. So within that course, they learnt to operate a forklift and a 360 grab, which was all included in the price of the course. They also went through identifying and grading the different metals, and they came away with a good knowledge of the Scrap Metal Dealers Act. So when we can't pay cash, they knew why we couldn't pay cash, and I found that they didn't question what we were doing, and they were a lot more accepting of the laws and legislation once they'd undertaken their apprenticeship. I'd highly recommend that you send some of your employees on the course. It really does bring them on.
Thank you, Susie. I'm going to pass over to Hayley Mellor from Mellor Metals now.
Morning, everyone. We found as a small family business in rural Norfolk that when we went to advertise for yard operatives and weighbridge operatives, that we just found it so difficult to find skilled candidates during that process. And so the apprenticeship scheme enabled us to put trainees who put employees through that we'd already had on site that we found would benefit from the apprenticeship scheme. So I did actually have one 21-year-old and the other one was 36. So this just shows that you can have anyone go on the apprenticeship at any age, so it doesn't have to be someone who is 18. They both really enjoyed it. One of them specialised then in the ELV depollution, and the other one was in material handling. Both of them come away knowing a lot more about the industry rather than just getting their machine certifications. They were able to understand why we do the things that we do, understand the regulations and legislation behind it all. And it's brilliant because you can then, the training can be adapted to your business needs. So their on-the-job hours can actually be anything that you have on site. So their on-the-job hours can be assigned to even general training that you're doing as well. So and the support system that we had was amazing. One of our apprentices did have learning difficulties, and they managed to get a distinction by the end of it. They had great support, and they all just, I think their passion for the industry then excelled after they done their apprenticeship scheme. So I really do encourage more members to get on board with this.
Thank you. We're now going to go over to Rachel Hart from Recycling Lives.
Good morning. So a little bit different in our experience. We do support the apprentices. We work within people that have been into the justice system. Now, we firmly believe in second chances. Now, we can use this to put our people through who've been in the justice system to give them a second chance and to help them develop their own skills and their own confidence, and then to help them sort of stay, you know, out of trouble and in work, and therefore it changes their lives and the people around them for the better. The recycling and scrap metal industry is generally known as a bit of a transient industry, which it doesn't help with succession plans and leaders of the future. If people don't feel like they're committed or invested in, then they just tend to move on. But with the apprenticeship scheme and the MRGO, they generally feel like they're part of the company and we're investing in them, which makes them more likely to stay and fit into our succession plans, and we can grow our own leaders of the future. And they may start doing material handling and ELV, but then after that, the next steps are team leaders, managers, even right up to director level. So I firmly believe that passionate employees stay within the business and can grow with us, and through word of mouth and how much they enjoy the courses, enjoy the learning when they're invested upon and supported, they pass that on through word of mouth to the colleagues and the friends, and then we become known as a really, really good employer to come and work for, who people want to stay with for a while. So I definitely recommend getting apprentices into your business and supporting them through training and investments, and hopefully we can keep people for as long as we can. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Rachel. We're now going to hear from Tom Russell, Learning Development Manager at EMR. Tom.
Thanks, Antonia. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the finance, and so I'm coming at this from a number of angles, but really I've got real passion for this, being on the board for North West Apprentice Ambassador Network, and I can now say a former apprentice as well, because I've just finished my apprenticeship. So it really proves that apprenticeships are for anyone at any age, which I think is a really good thing. And how you said that, you don't have to be 18 to look at joining as an MRGO. So these can be used for current employees as well in a lot of cases. So funding an apprenticeship, there is a pot out there, and we can all access it in some way, small or large businesses. Levy payers, which are those with a payroll of more than 3 million annually, those companies access this in really two ways, but it comes from either the levy pot or paid fully by government. Normally, these companies have more than 50 members of staff, so it comes from that levy pot. If that pot is exhausted, then it's still only 5% of the funding cap, and the cap for this is £9,000, and that means that you pay a maximum of £450 per apprentice, which is an absolute bargain given the trading value that you get from this apprenticeship. If the company has less than 50 members of staff, then it's fully funded, which is great. I'll talk about incentives on the next slide, and be absolutely happy to help anyone who wanted to know more about how to access and work with that levy pot, because I know even a lot of large employers really aren't tapping into it at the moment as well as they could. Sorry, Tony, can we just go back one slide? Thank you. Just on the bottom there for non-levy payers, so smaller businesses and SMEs, again, if the company has less than 50 members of staff, it's fully funded by the government with incentives coming back to you, sort of make money from taking an apprentice, which is great. Worth saying that the salary isn't funded by this. This is funding for the training itself. It's just a really important point to make. There are certain rules around what you can use the levy to fund, but this funds the training package itself. And finally, those SMEs who have more than 50 members of staff, then that funding is 5%, so it's £450 over the course of the apprenticeship. Just on employing apprentices and incentive payments, to mirror a couple of points that have already been made. This is new talent. It's ready to fill newly created roles or backfill succession plans or levers. So creating a pool of people that are ready to take on roles, and you get value really quickly from these people. It's not like you're waiting 12 to 18 months to get the value from them. They will start to contribute to the business very early on into the apprenticeship. There's a reduction in cost to hire, and there's a reduction in training up the new operatives because we're using the levy funding to fund a lot of that training. And then you get a really increased retention rates and loyalty, like Rachel said, to the business, because people feel like they've been invested into, which can really help with turnover. Just on levy incentives, there were enhanced payments, but they did end last year. So you may see some legacy reports about £3,000 payments, but they have ended. The current payments are £1,000. So if you take on an apprentice that's under the so 16 to 18, so we're probably looking at those 18-year-olds here, or if they've got an EHC plan or been in care and they're under 25, then they're paid in 2 installments. There's £1,000 back to the employer. So if you're paying £450 for the training, but you get £1,000 back, then that's a win in my eyes. And they're paid directly to employers from training providers. So do you think there's one more slide? I've just put this up as a bit of a reinforcement of some of the things that other people have said. You don't have to have all of this in place to take an apprentice on, but what apprentices can help to do is drive a lot of this in the business. They can start to sort of make businesses see where there's some really good support that can be put in place, not just for apprentices, but for everyone in the business. So I think it's a really good model that we've used certainly to look at and go, where are we doing things right, but where can we improve? If we can support apprentices this way, we can support graduates this way, and actually we can support our staff in this way as well. It's based on a national model that the IIP put out there, but I think it's a really good way of looking at what can I get from apprentices. And if those apprentices are going around talking about how good their induction, how good their management was, how good their learning is, that's going to rub off on the business, but actually on their mates and friends, and those are other people that are looking to come and work for your business as well. I think it's a really nice model to use to build a sort of framework for success.
Thank you, Tom. I'm now going to pass over to Chris Williams, Education Committee Chair.
Morning, everybody. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy days. Just want to go back to some of the images that were shown in the presentation. 2018, really important day for the Trailblazing Working Group. We launched our first ever apprenticeship in the metal recycling sector. I remember the day like it was yesterday. Jerry Brannigan turned up, we had government there, we had lots of members from the BMRA come from the length and breadth of England, Scotland and Wales to launch what was the very first cohort. Later on, a year, 18 months later, we managed to win an award for that very same qualification, but unfortunately, as of today, that qualification, the MRGO, is potentially at risk. And I say that because, you know, we just don't have the numbers, you know, as a, what was the trailblazing working group before the education committee. It's a commercial thing, really. You've got to look at least 50 per year for it to be a viable, you know, apprenticeship on the government register. You know, we've had it, we've had it confirmed from government that, you know, we as a sector clearly don't want this qualification. You know, we invested a lot of time and effort in getting the MRGO over the line. We met the criteria, we exceeded the criteria in many ways, and we engaged really well at the front end of this. But I guess, you know, 3-4 years on, it started to sort of wither away. And, you know, we can all look at the pandemic and we can all look at what's going on, you know, through what's going on throughout the UK and the economics of it all. I know it's difficult. I really know it's difficult. But when you've seen qualifications removed from a register, it's not something you can go back and resurrect. You can't. As I said earlier, it is the first qualification we had. We spent almost 2 years developing that qualification for the members, and the education committee is here to support you, you know, as an employer, as an apprentice, whether it's you know, a question, a query on funding, you know, you've got that support. You know, it can be any of the education committee, it can be the BMRA itself, but we've got that infrastructure ready and willing to support you. All we need from yourselves is a bit of commitment now, so that we don't have to be looking down, you know, that unfortunate situation where it gets removed, because if it does get removed, we're just not going to get it back. And I hear so many times where people are commenting on the qualifications that we're forced to do, which are waste qualifications. Let's not dress this up. They are waste qualifications. They're not specific to what we do. And when I went back last night and I had a look at our core, and I looked at all the elements that were built into that core piece of work. It's not just your health and safety and your compliance. We've got the Scrap Metal Dealers Act in there. We've got all the things that, you know, as members we asked for. It ticked all the boxes, and we had to come up with a scoring matrix and all that to meet the government requirements. And we did all that. And it's absolutely fantastic. And I know some of the people that are around the table today, I've had learners that have gone on program and they have had difficulties and they haven't been able to do certain things that we take for granted, like how to calculate interest rates on credit cards and mortgages and basic maths and English. And they've come out the back end of it with those life skills, not just the technical skills to be successful in their place of work, but them important life skills that sometimes we just take for granted. And it is a transient workforce, it really is. But actually, for those people that come into this sector and they want to be successful and they want to do well at a job, the support is there. And this is the only qualification that I know in existence. So I look at other sectors, I look at construction, demolition and quarrying. Nothing compares to this. It's core and options. In fact, it was the first core and options apprenticeship that was actually put on the register by government. It was a very unique sort of product that we developed, and we're very proud of that. I know, you know, that's why you've got quite a good attendance here today. We're really proud of that qualification, and it will be absolutely so sad if that gets removed. So all I ask is that you give this some serious thought. You know, we are going to be out there, you know, supporting you right the way from getting people on program, right the way to that all important, you know, recognition of completion. But any questions you've got, anything that's come up through any of the slides, any conversations, any, you know, discussion points that you feel like you want to just have a discussion around, then reach out and ask, because it is pretty much, you know, we're at that tipping point now. We've got to get 50 as a minimum within 12 months. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Chris. Well, we are going to go on to the Q&A session. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and open the camera so you can see us all. And then we'll start taking questions. If you unmute yourself, we're happy to take any questions. Does anyone have a question that they want to put in the chat? Okay, well, I'm going to start with a question. It's one that I was asked yesterday. Where do you find candidates if they're not on your payroll already?
Are you on for
I think
Tom?
it's depending on the size of the business, there's different ways that this can be done. You might do it in different ways. So when you were looking for your candidates, but from a national point of view, there is a national apprenticeship website. Anyone with an account can put any apprenticeship vacancies on there. And that's where schools and a lot of colleges will direct people to look for apprenticeships. So that's the obvious first port of call. And they will flag up for anyone from a school or a college that are searching for apprenticeships, the official government website. And it tells people really clearly what that apprenticeship's about, which I think is a really good thing. Any outreach work as well that's done with schools or colleges in the local area is a great thing to start doing. Because that will start to cultivate the knowledge for the young people in the region of where your sites are, of your business being there. It can be a really small thing from just linking with the local college to for bigger businesses, national regional programs, and there's certain organisations that can be tied in with, which I'm more than happy to sort of chat to people about. There's a national apprentice ambassador network as well, one in each region, and if you're interested in it, I'd really encourage engaging with whoever that is in your region, because those groups will be able to offer invaluable advice on how you can go about getting into the right marketing areas for the young people or not so young people in your area. So that's certainly a good starting point. There are thousands and tens of thousands of people search for apprenticeships all the time now. They are seen as a very viable alternative to things like university, and colleges and schools will push them that way.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have a question?
If anybody does have a question, if you put it in the Q&A rather than the chat, please. Thanks.
Okay, I think what we'll probably do is we'll close the webinar now. If you do have questions that you want to send directly, my email address is antonia@recyclemetals.org. And I can get those questions answered for you. Well, thank you to all of our panelists, and thank you for taking the time to attend the webinar. Any questions, please do get in touch. Thank you.